Hello, we are back again with a new chapter which is sense organs. I know I'm rushing a bit, but syllabus is too much to just complete and so here we go with a new chapter which is sense organ. There are five sense organs: your nose, skin, tongue, eye and ears. There are only two sense organs in detail in this syllabus of yours, that is eye and ear. We'll start with eye. So eyes, where are they present? You all know skull, seen in the horror movies, looks like this. There are orbits present in the skull. Inside these orbits are present your eyes. Okay, and in order to cover your eyes, there are present eyelids. Number of roles are being played by the eyelids. They are protecting, they are preventing the dust particles or any other particles to enter your eye. Then they are present the brows. The eyebrows also helps to protect the eye. They do not let your sweat or the water trickle down into the eye, but they diverge their path, right? So these all are the accessory organs which are helping the eye for the protections or kind of, yeah, just protection. So tear glands, there are present now tear glands, also known as lacrimal glands. They are present in your eyes, which help in the secretion of tears. Okay, then there is one, tears are not directly poured into the eye via the tear gland, but there are present proper tear ducts. Okay, so there is one lacrimal sac present. Then there are ducts. Through pipes the tear is entering inside your eye, and these pipes are known as ducts. Okay, so what is role of this tear is that it act as a lubricant. Okay, it is acting like a greased material, a lubricant in your eye. It also secretes, inside these tear is present an enzyme known as lysozyme, which helps to kill the bacteria. And in any case, if a dust particle enters inside your eye, this tear gland, or sorry, these tears, they help to wash away that dust particle. Okay, and then another function of tear is that they describe your emotions. If you are sad, then the tears will flow out. If you are extremely happy, in that case also the tears will come out. So these are describing your emotional state, like gum ke aansu and khushi ke aansu. Both tears are displaying the emotions, right? So talking about eye is firstly covered by a transparent layer. This transparent layer is known as conjunctiva. Sometimes your friends come in school with the gogs. Why? They said flu. They said flu ho gaya hai. So that flu is when your conjunctiva is infected, and that flu is known as conjunctivitis. Infection of conjunctiva is known as conjunctivitis. Okay. Now coming on to the proper structure of eyeball. So there are three layers of eyeball. Three layers. Front portion is a bit like this. Then there are three layers. The outermost is known as sclera. The middle one is known as choroid, and the innermost is known as retina. Sclerotic layer, choroid layer and retina. These three are the layers. So firstly, talking about the outermost sclera, the sclera is made up of tough tissues and it is white in color. So the white portion that you can see in your eye, this white portion, this is the sclera. Okay, but this white portion doesn't continue throughout the eye, but there is one portion, the colored portion, which you can see in your eye. So this sclera, it doesn't cover this colored part with itself, but from this region, from where the eye part is colored, the sclera, which is white in color, it makes itself transparent so that it doesn't cover this part. That region where sclera is not white but transparent, that region is known as cornea. Okay, so sclera is running throughout the eye. It is white in color, but it makes itself clear from this region, and this region is known as cornea. Okay, so then right, so sometimes this cornea region of patient, this region also becomes white. In that case, they cannot see anymore. The cornea, if it becomes opaque, this condition in our language is known as white motia, which means that the cornea is completely opaque now, so the light cannot enter. Light will only enter if this surface will be transparent. So if this is not transparent but it becomes opaque, then that condition is you cannot see in that condition. Okay, then you need a cornea to be transplanted. You need a donated cornea. There is no else solution to it. Okay, so coming to the second layer, which is choroid layer. Now choroid is the one which is getting all the blood supply and nerve supply. There is also present a pigment in the choroid layer known as melanin. This melanin helps the light rays to not, they prevent the scattering of the light rays, so that the light doesn't scatter here and there in the eye. In order to prevent that scattering, this melanin is present in the choroid layer. Okay, then the choroid expands to form a ciliary body. There are muscles known as ciliary body. These are also the extensions of choroid layer. Okay, then here inside the choroid layer are present the two things. One is the iris, and inside iris is present pupil. Iris is the colored portion of the eye. Why iris is of different colors? Why some of your iris is brown and green and gray and black? This is because there is one pigment present inside the iris, and the whatever color of the light this pigment will reflect, the same color it will give it to your iris. Inside the iris there is present a pigment which reflects a particular color of light. Light is white which enters. When light splits, it gives different colors. Like leaves appear to be green to us because they are reflecting green color. So similarly, if your friend's eye, they are brown because the pigment is reflecting brown color. Alright. Then inside the iris is present a small hole which is known as pupil. From this portion, the light enters inside the eye. Okay, and this pupil is the word pupil means, it is derived from pupa, which means doll. This is known as pupil because if you see yourself in someone else's eye, you'll see a small miniature image of yourself in another person's eye. So because you are looking as a doll inside another person's eye, so that part where you look yourself, it is known as pupil. It came from the word pupa, which means a doll. And the third layer is retina. Retina is the innermost layer and it is quite sensitive to the light. In fact, the image is also formed on the retina. And retina is having the sensory cells. There are two sensory cells known as the cones and the rods. Cones form a pigment known as iodopsin, and rods forms a pigment known as rhodopsin. Cones are active in the bright light. They are working in the bright light, and the rods, they work in the dark light. Cones have the pigment iodopsin, which enables us to see the colorful objects, and rods have a pigment rhodopsin, which works only in the dim light. So why can't you see purple, red, blue flowers in the moonlight? Because in the moonlight, your rods are working, and the pigment produced by rods doesn't help to differentiate any of the colors. So everything in the moonlight appears to be black and white. Or in the dim light, you cannot differentiate between the colors. All you can see is black and white. And when you are present in the bright light, when you are moving here and there in the daylight, you can differentiate all the colors, because daytime your cones are working and your cones produce a pigment iodopsin, which quite well goes with the different colors. Okay, so you got this cones and rods. Remember, rods work in the dim light and cones work in the bright light. Then there is one portion present in the eye where the image is formed, and that portion, it's in the retina only, is known as yellow spot. Yellow spot is also known as macula lutea. This is the area of best vision. If your image is formed on this area, then you can see full-fledged thing. But there is also a region present, a blind spot, where you cannot see at all. If the image is formed on blind spot, you'll not be able to see anything. The reason is that this yellow spot is completely full of sensory cells. All the rods and cones are lying inside this yellow spot. Basically, cones are present in yellow spot and the rods are lying here and there. But if the image is formed on this blind spot doesn't have any sensory cell. Sensory cells are the one which will receive the light and then send it to the brain, such that brain refers to whatever image is formed, right? If image is formed on this blind spot, there are no sensory cells in the blind spot, and hence you'll be able to see nothing. And just behind this iris is present the lens. When light enters through the pupil, this lens does everything. Lens is the one which refracts the light such that the image is formed. If the object is far away, then the light will be entering something like this, falling on lens and then refracting, and the image will formed on the retina, on this yellow spot. But if the object is quite close, then the light will enter the lens something like this, and the image will be formed again on the yellow spot on the retina. Now, lens has one really good property. It is attached to the ciliary body with the help of suspensory ligaments. Suspensory ligaments are holding the lens. Suspensory ligaments are further attached with the ciliary body. And these suspensory ligaments, along with the working of ciliary body, helps the lens to change its shape. Okay, the lens doesn't tend to look like the same thing, but it contracts and relaxes depending upon the location of the object. How far is the object located? Depending on that, lens will change its shape. For example, if you're viewing from distant, if you are going for distant vision, if your object is located far away, in that case, lens will become thin, patla, okay, so that the light can enter inside and form a image image. But if you are viewing an object from nearby, if you are going for near vision, then the lens becomes round, mota, okay, just to make sure that the light enters properly and it forms the image on the yellow spot only. And this phenomenon is known as accommodation. When your lens changes its shape such that it can make sure that image is formed on the yellow spot, this is known as accommodation. And in order to view the distant objects, the lens becomes thin, and in order to view the near objects, the lens becomes round. And how it is changing its shape? Because of these suspensory ligaments which are further attached to the ciliary body. Okay. And then there is another interesting thing that whenever you enter a dark room, you are coming from the sunlight and you just entered into the dark room. From a bright sunny day, you just came home and enter your room, you are unable to see anything, because when you were in bright light, your cones were working. Once you entered a dark room, the cones cannot see in the dark room. Your eye needs to activate rod cells in order to see in that dark room. So a fraction of second or fractions of seconds are required for cones to stop working, and for the rods to get activated. So meanwhile the rods are being getting activated, you are unable to see. Similarly, if you were in dark room, your rod cells were active, but immediately if you went in the sunlight, you again were unable uh, to not see anything for a while. This is because things need some time, right? Rods were working, now rods have to stop their function and cones are supposed to be activated. So meanwhile the cones and rods are activating themselves, there is one fraction of second when you cannot see, and that is the time when you get a blurry thing, when you are unable to see, right? Now talking about chambers, there are two regions of the eye. What are that? Okay, here is the this is the rough structure of eye. Here is lens. The portion of eye which is present in the front part of the lens is known as aqueous chamber, and this is filled with a clear water like fluid which is known as aqueous humor. This aqueous humor keeps your eye moist and it helps to refract light. Refraction, you know now, when light enters from one medium to another medium, it deviates its path, right? So that refraction is occurring due to this aqueous humor. Okay, then the portion of the eye which is present behind the lens, this is known as vitreous humor, and here is present a jelly like substance. Sorry, this chamber is known as vitreous chamber, and inside this vitreous chamber is present a jelly like fluid which is known as vitreous humor. Function of vitreous humor is that it helps to maintain the shape of your eyeball, right? Then the portion where eye ends, there are nerves which are leaving the eye, and the one main nerve which enters the brain is known as optic nerve. It delivers the message to the brain and it also brings back the message from the brain to the eye. The nerve is optic nerve. So how do we see? Firstly, the light rays enter in your eye through the conjunctiva. After conjunctiva, it enters through cornea, and then from cornea it enters into the aqueous humor. From aqueous humor it enters the lens, and from lens it enters the vitreous humor, and ultimately the image is formed on the retina. But the first image which is formed on the retina is always inverted. It is real but inverted, and then a message is transmitted via optic nerve to the brain, and then brain interprets that image as a virtual image. It makes the image erect. So if you can see a tree in front of you quite erect, if you can see all the things erect, that is not because your eye is making an image which is erect, but it is your brain which is showing the image erect to you. But however, the image which was formed on the retina, it was inverted. You can see the erect things all because of your brain, right? That is all about eye. Now there is something like common defects of the eye. Your eye sometimes doesn't behave well. In those situations, there are a number of defects. The very first one is myopia. Myopia is the short-sightedness, when you cannot see the far objects. Myopia is a situation when you cannot see the far objects. This is due to the fact, the two reasons can be there. Either the eyeball has become short or your lens has become too curved. In that situation, you cannot see the far things, and this defect is known as short-sightedness. When you cannot see far things, defect is short-sightedness. When you cannot see the near things, defect is long-sightedness. And in order to cure this, you can use a concave lens. And when you cannot see the near objects, that situation is known as hyperopia. And in order to, reason might be the eyeball has become short. Okay, and you can use a convex lens in order to cure this. Next is astigmatism. Astigmatism is a defect in which you can see some of the object properly and some of the objects blurry. This is because your cornea has become uneven. So the light which is passing through some part of the cornea, they form proper image, but the light which is entering from the uneven portions of the cornea, they do not form the correct image. So some of the things can be clearly seen and other are seen as a blur. So this can be corrected by using cylindrical lens. Another condition is presbyopia, which commonly occurs in the old age people. This is because their lens loses their flexibility. Now lens is not so flexible enough to see both the near and far objects clearly, and this again convex lens can be used in order to cure this thing. Another one is cataract, in which the lens becomes opaque. Your lens can't see anything. The only solution of this is to change the lens, right? Another one is night blindness. Night blindness is when your rods are not working or there are no rods present in your eye. As we just said, that the rods are the cell which are active in the dim light. If there are no rods, then you cannot see in the dim light. This occurs due to deficiency of vitamin A. Then there is color blindness, in which people cannot differentiate between various colors. This is a genetic disease. And then there are corneal opacity. The cornea of some of the patients, this cornea portion, this we discussed earlier as well, that this is white motia when the cornea becomes opaque, and this cornea needs to be transplanted. Then there is squint. Two types of squint are there. There is one cross eye. The eye are something like this, and then there are wide eyes. Eyes get at the extreme portions. This is known as squint. This can be cured by operations only, or there are some exercises which can to some extent cure the squint. So that's all about eye. And the image of the eye, when an eye sees any kind of object, you can see that image, it gets stuck in your brain for 0.10 seconds. If you have seen a person in some of the market and you can only remember that person for about 0.10 seconds. After that, you will forget the face of that person, right? And this thing is used, this is known as after image or persistent image. When these videography, they weren't invented, then the pictures, they were displayed at the speed of 24 pictures per second. Now, if you're saying that you can remember one picture for 0.10 second, it just persists in your brain, then when the pictures are moving with such a pace, 24 pictures per second are being displayed on your screen in front of you, then you feel like it is a video going on. You can't differentiate between a picture and video. Because if pictures are going on and one picture is staying inside your brain for 0.10 second, that quite appears to you as a video, right? And this phenomenon is known as after image, that your image is staying inside your brain for about 0.10 second, right? This is all about eye. In the second part, we'll be discussing the ear.